Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. In this video, I share with you another amazing yoga class. Got my handy dandy notebook, let's do this. So this was my fourth yoga class under this program. My first C2, which is the second level power class at Core Power. These are also going to be a common class. I love taking these when I can. They're much more, I would say, balance focused and flow focused, and they're individually unique. This one was at 8:45 a.m. This was with an instructor named Kira. So 8:45 a.m. is earlier than I'll typically do yoga. I even mentioned, I think in one of the earlier of these videos, that I don't like to do a yoga class earlier in the morning because I don't feel quite awake for it. 8:45 is kind of the upper limit of that theory. However, that is not something I've totally set in stone, and I'll be trying some very early morning ones at some point throughout this to really see if that still holds true or not. Anyways, as I was saying, this was with Kira. This was her first time, her second time teaching a C2 class ever. I've taken a couple of her sculpt classes and they've been great. She's an awesome instructor and a really cool person. She also went to the Leeds School of Business. She studied ops and I think entrepreneurship. Cool person and a very good yoga instructor, especially for how early on in the journey she is. This was at the South Boulder studio, and this was on a Sunday morning. Okay, so some key points that came from the class. First one is that I noticed that my length of my breaths is longer than those of the average person attending the class. That may just have something to do with the size of my body and the fact that I have a larger lung cavity, therefore I will breathe longer. It could be due to restricted breathing pathways, maybe because of my asthma or because of just a stuffy nose or just the way my body's built. It could be because no, that's pretty much it. Those were the only reasons I thought of, but the reasons why aren't as important as the fact that it is simply true. My breaths are long. But I'm going to touch more on that later and how I asked her how to work with that and got some advice, and we'll get more on that later. Another key point was my Warrior 2 actually felt somewhat misaligned, so this is the day after. If you just watched the previous video to this one, I'll link that one up right now. I had deadlifted the prior day, and so because of that, my hips were tight, specifically my groin was tight, because that's a very important area for deadlifting and for pulling weight, things like that. I'll link up my rack pull video so you can hear me talk more about things like the buoyant arch and about having a buoyant inner leg, which allows you then, I just kicked out my legs, which allows you then to actually pull effectively. There were a few areas that I think this could have actually come from. One would be my feet. So if I'm not really pressing through the four corners of my feet, it's very easy for my knee to fall in without that necessarily being due to a different structural error within my body. I was fairly aware of my feet during class, but not necessarily in the Warrior 2. So that may have been why. It also could be my hip flexors, because I noticed that my pelvis or my pelvic girdle was sort of dumping forward when I looked in the mirror. I brought it back under and that sort of helped, and I was able to get into a fairly decent Warrior 2. However, it was definitely the case that that could have come from tight hip flexors, pulling the front of my pelvis down and then leading to that forward pelvic tilt. That also could have been from tension in the groin, which could have been pulling my knee more inward. I know that a cue for Warrior 2 is to bring your knee outward so that it's more in line and on top of your foot as opposed to inward, because that could be unhealthy for the knee. Specifically, it can cause injury. And I was doing a fairly decent job of that, but when I did that, it would rotate my hips forward towards the front of the room as opposed to laterally. I always sort of struggle to find that area. It's partly due to compression within my joints. That's, again, another note on Paul Grilly's tension and compression workshop. But regardless, I think I still have room to improve within that area due to tension. My number one bet is on the groin, but it could have been these other areas that I'm talking about. Another thing I want to talk about is just how much I love the quad stretch that comes at the end of a runner's lunge. For those of you that don't know what a runner's lunge is, it's like typical, just taking a lunge where you're on one knee and then you move forward to get that hip flexor. Let's call it our left hip flexor this time. Then you come out of it a little bit. You inch your right foot, in this case, the one not being stretched, out to the right a bit more, and then you come inward in between your two legs. That allows you to get much deeper into your middle groin. And then from there, what I do, so normally what you would do is you would then just reach back over your front foot, so away from your stretched out hip, meaning for me in this case it would be to the right, and I would reach back and I would grab my left foot and then stretch my left quad along with my left hip flexor. Now, for me, I have to come out of the lunge a fair amount to be able to get back to that because of the length of certain areas of my body, but also because of a limitation and flexibility of my quad. Now, I love that quad stretch. It's definitely very intense. My quads have to be warm. I have to be towards the end of a flow or a class to be able to get to that, which is exactly how they cue it and how they set it up within the class, so they know that. But I just wanted to say that I love that, and I highly recommend doing a class even just for that stretch specifically. One more thing I want to talk about is, like I said, this was the day after a deadlift session. I was very sore and tired. I was debating whether or not to even go that morning. Eventually, I just did what Elliot Hulse always says. He said, just turn your brain off. So I did. I turned my brain off, and I went, and I came to a perfect class. It was a lot of twists, which helped me open and create length in the areas between my vertebrae, which was very beneficial for me. It also helped open up my side bodies and my lats, which was again very beneficial. These are twists. Most of them were standing twists. I'm a big fan of more seated twists because I feel like I can use my arms more for leverage of my torso as opposed to having to use my musculature to create the twist. But I feel like both add value in different ways. The ones seated allow for more of a stretching twist, and the ones standing allow for more of a building... what's the term? Building effective strength while in distant mobility. So being able to hold the distant twist. There's a certain term for it, but I can't really remember it. But then I asked Kira a fair amount of questions. We got into a nice long conversation after the fact, and I'm going to go ahead and run through some of that with you now. First one, why she practices and why she teaches. She was originally drawn in by the amazing workout that is the Yoga Sculpt class. I get that. I was somewhat the same, but I definitely right now am in love with those Sculpt classes, and a lot of my friends are drawn to yoga because of those as well, so I totally get where she's coming from on that front. If you haven't tried a Sculpt class, try it. I likely will not be making a video about a Sculpt class because those do not count towards the journals that I have to take for my training. The reason for that is because not every Sculpt teacher has to take a 200-hour training. There's a 50-hour Sculpt training that you can do and become a Sculpt teacher. But I may still journal one because I think it would be beneficial for you. Now I'm kind of obligated, aren't I? Alright, it's coming. Why drawn in by physics? Now as for why she stays and why she teaches, she does so because it helps her feel fulfilled. She loves the idea of helping people, so much so actually that it also doubles as her sort of getting some validation or certification behind what she really wants to create, which ultimately will be some sort of, not to put you on the spot, but some sort of like comprehensive health and wellness center encompassing nutrition, yoga, maybe chiropractics, maybe like sleep consultations, stress consultations, things like that. Sorry, Kira. But anyways, or you're welcome, because maybe one of the people listening to this will end up being one of your main clients or someone that helps you grow your business. But anyways, that's why she does it and why she stays. For a theme for her class, she said self-love, which I loved as a theme. A quote that she brought to class, which I loved, was, you fill your cup, and then in excess you spill over and you love others. You fill the cups of others. I love that idea. That idea that, so I'm someone, and she's similar, where we give ourselves a lot to other individuals. We want to help people. We want to help them. The issue is that sometimes we'll do that at the expense of our own cup, of our own self-compassion, and of our own self-care. Now, I love this idea of caring for oneself so much that you have excess self-love that spills over and fills the cups of other individuals. And I feel that in my own life, where when I'm really honoring myself, doing the things that I know the strongest, best version of myself wishes that I will do, and create the life for myself that I wish to create, that I end up giving more love, more reception, listening more, and sharing more positivity with those who I hold close and hold dear in my own life. For a challenge for Kira, she said it was confidence. She's a fairly new yoga teacher. Hold on one sec. So she's a fairly new yoga teacher. She's trying to do, she wants to do justice to the honor and privilege that is creating such an awesome, inviting but challenging space of a yoga class, and really creating the best experience for those students that she can. That's a difficult thing to do, and it's difficult to have the confidence to go in and really own that space. I totally see that, and I can see how people will struggle with that, myself included. One of the amazing yoga teachers in the Boulder community that I love is named Rob Loud. He originally trained at Core Power, I think the one in South Boulder, but now he works at the Pod, mainly in Denver, but also in Boulder a fair amount. I took a class with him not too long ago, maybe a month or so, and one thing that he talked about was even when you're in a pose, or even when you're in an area of life where things are difficult, and where we are struggling, and where things are just plain hard, and internally we may be freaking out and stressed, externally we have a face of, I got this. I've got this. And in that, it creates the internal sensation. Form dictates function. I loved this idea. I've implemented it in my own life in many ways. It's similar to a Stoic idea of detachment from those emotional experiences because they don't serve us, but it's much more in tune with them. So I listen to them and I honor them, but at the same time I exude this simple idea of, I've got this. I asked her for advice, and this is where I'll now come back to the breath that I touched on earlier. The breath that I touched on earlier. That was not even on purpose, by the way. Just kind of awesome. The goal is to honor myself, my body, and my breath. Most injuries will come from the chaturanga area of yoga, meaning the area where you are in, let's see, what does it normally come to? You go plank, down from a push-up or halfway, come forward into an up dog, and then come back into a down dog. That should take a long time, especially for someone with the lung capacity that I have. It takes about twice as long as they cue it. And usually I'm rushing into it in the first place because I take longer in the other poses. For instance, to go from a warrior two to an extended warrior to I can't remember what it's called, but when you come back up from the warrior two and your hand comes up and you stretch along the side body, and then to come back to warrior two and then close it down. All of that, because my breaths are longer, if I want to honor the full duration of that, what she recommends that I do, and what I actually believe I will do from now on, is to simply skip the chaturanga, avoid the rush and possible injury of the shoulder, and move to a high plank. This will allow for a more effective, really, growth in my postures and in my progress as well, because it's on those edges of the inhales and exhales where we can really find the development of the posture. Good instructors will notice the certain students in the class that are either going slower or faster with their breath than the instructor is cueing, and will either speed up or slow down based on that. Because of that, if I honor my breath, a good instructor may pick that up and allow them to sort of move the median breath length that they want in the class. Regardless, I take long breath and I will be implementing those. Also, this comes to a note of not comparing myself to others. Some people's breath simply matches up perfectly with the flow that the instructor's cueing, and it helps them have a more beautiful practice. I love that for them. I'm happy that they're having that experience, but that may simply not be my experience, and I'm totally okay with honoring my longer breaths and allowing myself to move into the postures fully, even if that means omitting certain areas where I may end up with an injury. Thanks so much for watching this video. Peace.